The emergency beacon pierced through subspace like a scream in the void, its desperate signal reaching across the galaxy to every civilized world capable of receiving it. On the bridge of the Galactic Council monitoring station orbiting Xerion Prime, Communications Officer Zelthari's 4 eyes widened in alarm as the translation protocols decoded the message. "By the ancient stars," she whispered, her crystalline voice trembling. "It's the Corvani merchant fleet. They're under attack by the Vazcor Syndicate near the neutral zone." Captain Theron, a seasoned Altarian whose blue scales had dulled with age and experience, moved swiftly to her station. His weathered face grew grave as he read the details scrolling across the holographic display. 23 vessels carrying refugees from the war-torn Epsilon sector. Families, children, elderly, all trapped as the notorious pirate armada closed in for what would surely be a massacre. "How long until the nearest council fleet can respond?" Theron demanded, already knowing the answer would be inadequate. 47 hours, sir. The 3rd Defense Fleet is engaged in the Rigel campaign, and the 5th is undergoing repairs at 47 hours. Theron's voice carried the weight of inevitable tragedy. "There'll be space debris by then." The bridge fell silent, except for the steady hum of life support systems and the increasingly frantic repetition of the Corvani distress call. Every officer present understood the mathematics of interstellar warfare. The Vazcor Syndicate didn't take prisoners, didn't negotiate ransoms. They were scavengers who killed for sport and profit, leaving nothing but shattered hulls and grieving families in their wake. "Sir," Zelthari's voice barely rose above a whisper. "There is one possibility." Theron turned, hope flickering in his golden eyes despite his better judgment. "Speak." "The human monitoring station in the Terra system. They're only 14 hours away from the Corvani position." A collective intake of breath swept the bridge. Several junior officers exchanged nervous glances, while the more experienced crew members simply stared at their captain in stunned silence. In the 300 years since humanity had been discovered and reluctantly admitted to the Galactic Council, their reputation had grown into something approaching legend or nightmare, depending on one's perspective. The humans? Lieutenant Corex, the weapons officer, couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. "Sir, with respect, they only have one ship in that sector. The Vazcor Syndicate is fielding 37 vessels, including 4 dreadnoughts." Theron's laugh held no humor. "You're thinking like a civilized being, Lieutenant. These are humans we're talking about. They don't come from a civilized world." The captain moved to the central command console, his claws hovering over the communication controls. Every being in the council had heard the stories about Sol 3, the planet the humans called Earth, a death world of such astounding lethality that its very existence challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about habitable planets. Gravity that would crush most species flat, weather systems that spawned storms capable of leveling cities, predators that hunted in coordinated packs, microscopic organisms that could kill in hours. And the humans had not merely survived on this nightmare world, they had thrived. They had become apex predators themselves, developing technologies and tactics that reflected their planet's savage nature. When they finally reached the stars, they brought that lethal heritage with them. "Send the beacon to Terra Station Alpha," Theron ordered, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was requesting. "Tell them we have a humanitarian crisis requiring immediate intervention." "Sir," Corex protested, "are we certain this is wise? Human intervention in council space has always had complications." Corex protested. Corex protested. Corex protested. Corex protested. Complications. Theron's expression hardened. 23 ships, Lieutenant. Over 40,000 civilians. What complications are worth more than their lives? The communication went out, carried by quantum entanglement transmitters across the vast gulf of space. On the human monitoring station, automated systems would be processing the signal, analyzing threat assessments, calculating response parameters, and somewhere in the Sol system, the machinery of human warfare would begin to move. What that machinery looked like, what capabilities it possessed, remained one of the galaxy's most closely guarded mysteries. The humans shared their medical technology freely, their agricultural innovations gladly, their entertainment with enthusiasm. But their military assets? Those remained hidden behind veils of secrecy and misdirection that had frustrated Council intelligence services for centuries. "Response incoming, sir," Zelthari announced, her voice tight with anxiety. The reply was typically human in its brevity. "Beacon received. Response authorized. Stand by." No details about deployment timeframes. No requests for additional intelligence. No negotiations about rules of engagement or collateral damage limitations. Just 3 simple sentences that somehow carried an undertone of absolute certainty. "That's it?" Corex demanded. "What kind of military responds like that?" "The kind that doesn't waste time on explanations," Theron replied grimly. "Signal all Council vessels to maintain safe distance from the engagement zone. Whatever the humans are planning, we don't want to be anywhere near it when it happens." As the hours passed, the bridge crew monitored the situation with growing tension. The Corvani merchant fleet had managed to avoid immediate destruction by hiding in a nebula, but their position was deteriorating rapidly. The Vazcor pirates were systematically hunting them down, using sensor penetrators to locate the hiding ships one by one. 14 hours and 17 minutes after the human response, space itself seemed to shiver. The first sign was a gravitational anomaly detected by the station's sensors, a ripple in space-time that suggested something massive was approaching. Then came the energy signatures, readings that made the monitoring equipment scream warnings as power levels exceeded safe parameters. "Sir," the sensor operator's voice cracked, "I'm reading massive spatial distortions at the engagement coordinates. Whatever's coming through is..." "Sir, these readings don't make sense." On the main display, space began to tear. Not metaphorically, but literally reality itself, parting like a curtain to reveal something that shouldn't exist. Through the rift came shapes that defied conventional understanding of starship design. They were sleek and predatory, their hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Weapons, clusters that looked like metal teeth. Engine systems that burned with the intensity of captured stars. 3 ships, only 3, against the 37 vessels of the Vazcor Syndicate. But as the human warships emerged fully from their impossible transit, every sensor on the monitoring station screamed a single, overwhelming truth. These were not ships built by any civilization that valued mercy or restraint. These were weapons crafted by the children of a Deathworld, and they had come to collect a debt written in blood. The Vazcor Syndicate had ruled the Outer Rim through 3 centuries of calculated brutality, their reputation built on the bones of countless victims and the fear of civilized worlds. Admiral Krextar, commander of their most feared battle group, had never encountered prey that fought back with anything approaching competence. Today, he expected nothing different. 3 ships, his tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking with amusement. Small class, unknown configuration. Shall we offer them the traditional choice of death or slavery? Krextar's 6 arms gestured dismissively as he studied the tactical display from his command throne aboard the dreadnought Bone Harvester. The approaching vessels registered as insignificant blips against his armada's overwhelming firepower. Unknown configuration suggests salvage value. Disable them, strip their technology, then execute the crews slowly. Make sure the merchant fleet witnesses everything. But as the human ships closed distance, something unsettling began to register on the Syndicate's sensors. The vessels weren't broadcasting surrender signals or attempting desperate escape maneuvers. Instead, they were accelerating directly toward the pirate formation with purpose that suggested either madness or absolute confidence. "Admiral," the sensor operator's voice carried the first note of uncertainty. "The approaching ships are generating massive energy buildups. I'm reading weapon systems that, Admiral, these power signatures are beyond anything in our databases." "Impossible," Krextar snarled. 3 mid-size vessels cannot threaten a full battle group. Open fire. Demonstrate the cost of defying the Syndicate. The Vazcor fleet unleashed a barrage that should have vaporized any conventional starship. Plasma cannons, particle accelerators, and fusion torpedoes created a storm of destruction that lit up space like an artificial star. The energy expenditure alone represented enough firepower to crack a small moon. The human ships flew through the barrage as if it were a gentle rain. Their hulls, composed of materials that bent the laws of physics, absorbed impacts that should have been lethal. Adaptive armor flowed like liquid metal, redirecting energy strikes and regenerating damage faster than the Syndicate weapons could inflict it. Point defense systems that moved with inhuman precision intercepted missiles with surgical accuracy. "What are those ships made of?" the tactical officer whispered, his earlier amusement replaced by growing alarm. Krextar had no answer. In 3 centuries of piracy across dozens of systems, he had never encountered vessels that simply ignored concentrated fire from an entire fleet. The human ships continued their approach. Still silent, still purposeful, leaving the Syndicate's best efforts scattered harmlessly across space. Then the humans opened fire. The lead vessel, designated by human forces as HSS Prometheus, unleashed weapons that redefined the concept of overkill. Gravitational lances that twisted space itself into weapons, causing 3 Syndicate frigates to collapse inward as their own mass became their destroyer. Energy projectors that didn't simply pierce armor, but converted it into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The second ship, Cerberus, deployed something the Watching Council monitoring station could only classify as kinetic nightmare. Projectiles that somehow ignored the normal limitations of acceleration, reaching fractions of light speed and punching through entire vessels like bullets through paper. Each impact created expanding spheres of destruction that consumed everything within kilometers. The third ship, Nemesis, revealed why humans had earned their terrifying reputation through subtlety rather than raw power. Boarding pods that moved like living things, cutting through hulls and disgorging human soldiers equipped with technology that seemed crafted by demons. The pirates who encountered them broadcast screams that haunted the communication channels, not just fear of death, but terror at facing something that fought with a savagery their civilized minds couldn't comprehend. "Pull back," Krextar roared, his tactical composure finally cracking. "All ships, emergency retreat." But the human vessels had anticipated this response. As the Syndicate fleet attempted to disengage, they discovered that space around them had been subtly altered. Jump drives failed to initialize. Hyperspace windows refused to open. The humans had somehow weaponized reality itself, creating a combat zone that operated by their rules alone. The massacre that followed would be studied by military academies for generations. The Syndicate's numerical advantage meant nothing against opponents who had evolved their warfare in a crucible of planetary-scale violence. Every human weapon system reflected their world's lethal heritage tools, designed not just to kill efficiently, but to ensure complete victory against any possible threat. The dreadnought Bone Harvester, pride of the Syndicate fleet, found itself facing the Prometheus in single combat as the remaining pirates died around them. Krextar threw everything his ship possessed against the human vessel weapons that had leveled cities, defenses that had withstood the concentrated fire of Council battle groups. The Prometheus methodically destroyed each system, with weapons fire so precise it seemed almost surgical. Engines disabled with shots that severed power conduits without breaching the reactor. Weapons eliminated by projectiles that somehow curved through space to find every weak point. Command systems fried by energy beams that penetrated shields as if they didn't exist. "How?" Krextar demanded as his ship died around him, emergency lighting casting eerie shadows across the bridge. "How do you fight like this?" The response came not through ship-to-ship communication, but through a direct neural link that bypassed every security system on the Syndicate vessel. The voice that spoke carried the weight of a world that had forged its children in crucibles of lava and storm, predator and prey. "We learned to fight by surviving on a world that tried to kill us every day for 1,000,000 years, the human commander said, his words carrying casual menace that chilled Krextar's ichor. "We developed weapons by imagining what could threaten us. We built ships by assuming our enemies would be as dangerous as our planet. You made the mistake of threatening innocence while we were watching." The neural link carried more than words. It transmitted sensory data that showed Krextar glimpses of Earth. Hurricanes that could flatten continents. Predators that hunted in the deep ocean with tools their prey couldn't imagine. Volcanic systems that could sterilize hemispheres. And through it all, Humans not just surviving but thriving, turning every challenge into an opportunity to become more dangerous. Your fleet is finished, the human continued with the calm certainty of stating a simple fact. Your crews will be processed according to galactic law. Your victims will be rescued and given safe passage. And you will carry a message back to whatever hole spawned you. Earth remembers every innocent that suffers, while we have the power to help. We mark every debt. And eventually, we collect them all. The Bone Harvester's weapon systems died with a final sputter of energy, leaving the mighty dreadnought floating helplessly in space. Around them, the last of the Syndicate fleet surrendered or died. Their 3-century reign of terror ended by 3 ships, crewed by the children of a world that had taught them to be more terrible than any nightmare the galaxy could imagine. In the aftermath of what historians would later call the Xerion Nebula incident, space itself seemed to hold its breath. The debris field that had once been the feared Vazcor Syndicate fleet drifted in expanding clouds of metal and regret, while the 3 human warships moved among the wreckage with the methodical precision of apex predators securing their territory. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, her weathered face betraying no satisfaction at the destruction surrounding them. At 53, she carried the quiet authority of someone who had learned command in Earth's military academies, where failure meant death, and success meant the chance to face tomorrow's challenges. Her dark eyes surveyed the tactical displays with the same intensity she might have used to watch a thunderstorm approaching across the Pacific. Cerberus reports all Syndicate vessels neutralized or surrendered, Captain. Her tactical officer announced. Lieutenant Commander Chen had served under Vasquez for 7 years, long enough to recognize the subtle tension in her posture that suggested the day's work was far from finished. Nemesis? Boarding operations complete. We've secured the Syndicate command crew and recovered their operational databases. Intelligence estimates they've hit over 200 merchant convoys in the past 5 years alone. Vasquez nodded grimly. The mathematics of piracy were always written in blood. But the Syndicate had been particularly efficient killers. Today's intervention would save far more lives than just the Corvani refugees, but she took no joy in the calculus of violence, even when it served justice. Signal the merchant fleet, she ordered. Full escort to the nearest council station. Medical teams are standing by if needed. The rescue operation that followed demonstrated another aspect of human capability that consistently surprised galactic observers. The same species that had just demonstrated weapons technology bordering on the magical now deployed medical and humanitarian resources with equal sophistication. Human medics who could perform battlefield surgery in zero gravity. Engineering teams that could restore life support to heavily damaged vessels in hours rather than days. Counselors trained to help traumatized survivors process experiences that would haunt most species for generations. On the council monitoring station, Captain Theron watched the rescue operations with a mixture of relief and unease that he couldn't quite identify. The Corvani refugees were safe, that much was undeniable. 43,000 beings who had been facing certain death were now receiving medical care, food, and safe passage to sanctuary worlds. But the demonstration of human military capabilities had raised questions that would echo through council chambers for decades to come. Sir. Communications Officer Zelthari spoke quietly, her crystalline voice reflecting the subdued mood that had settled over the bridge. We're receiving status reports from the human vessels. They're requesting permission to transfer Syndicate prisoners to council custody for prosecution. Of course they are, Theron murmured. The humans always followed proper protocols when operating in council space, always respected jurisdictional boundaries and legal frameworks. It was one of the many contradictions that made them such enigmatic allies. They could deploy weapons that reshaped local space-time, then politely request permission to file proper paperwork for prisoner transfers. There's something else, sir. Admiral Vasquez is requesting a communication channel. Theron straightened in his command chair, suddenly aware that he was about to speak directly with one of the legendary human military commanders. Earth's admiralty remained largely mysterious to the Council, their careers and capabilities hidden behind security classifications that even Allied intelligence services couldn't penetrate. The holographic display shimmered, resolving into the image of a human woman whose presence seemed to fill the bridge despite the vast distance between ships. Admiral Vasquez wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's naval forces, but something in her bearing suggested she had earned her rank through trials that would have broken most beings. Captain Theron. Her voice carried the warm professionalism that characterized human diplomatic contacts. I wanted to thank you personally for alerting us to the situation. Your quick thinking saved a lot of lives today. Admiral, I should be thanking you, Theron replied, still struggling to reconcile the polite woman on his screen with the devastating efficiency he had witnessed in the past few hours. Your response was extraordinary. A shadow of something, perhaps sadness, crossed Vasquez's features. We do what we have to do, Captain. Earth learned long ago that the universe isn't always a kind place. Sometimes the only way to protect innocence is to be more dangerous than the things that threaten them. Your ships, Theron ventured, his curiosity overcoming diplomatic caution. They're unlike anything in our databases. The technology you deployed today is necessary, Vasquez finished gently but firmly. Captain, I know the Council has questions about human military capabilities. I understand the concerns about power balances and security implications. But I want you to understand something important. We don't build these weapons because we enjoy war. We build them because our planet taught us that predators only respect superior force. She paused, her expression growing distant as if remembering something painful. Every human who serves in our fleet grew up on a world where tsunamis can kill millions, where hurricanes can flatten cities, where a single earthquake can reshape continents. We learned to fight by surviving daily battles against a planet that was actively trying to kill us. When we reached the stars and found beings like the syndicate creatures who choose to prey on the innocent, we recognized them for what they were, just another kind of natural disaster that needed to be stopped. The communication continued for several more minutes, covering logistics and legal protocols, but Theron found himself focusing on the Admiral's words about natural disasters. It was a perspective that reframed everything he thought he knew about human psychology. They didn't see themselves as conquerors or warriors in the traditional sense. They saw themselves as emergency responders, trained to handle catastrophes that threatened innocent life. After the channel closed, the bridge remained quiet for long moments. Finally, Lieutenant Korek spoke what everyone was thinking. Sir, what happens now? The Council will want to know exactly what they witnessed today. Our allies will have questions. Our enemies will want to understand what they're facing. Theron considered the question carefully. The human ships were already departing, having completed their humanitarian mission with the same ruthless efficiency they had applied to destroying the Syndicate fleet. Soon, space would return to its normal emptiness, leaving only debris and radiation signatures as evidence of what had occurred. Now, he said finally, we do exactly what Admiral Vasquez suggested. We remember that the humans are our allies, not our enemies. We remember that they respond to humanitarian crises, not territorial ambitions, and we make sure that message reaches every corner of the galaxy. He turned to face his crew, his golden eyes reflecting the weight of revelation. Today we learned something important about our human allies. They didn't come to the stars to conquer or colonize. They came to ensure that the nightmares of their world, the predators and disasters that shape them, never threaten those who can't defend themselves. As the Council monitoring station prepared its reports, and the rescued Corvani refugees received medical care aboard human vessels, word of the Xerion Nebula incident began to spread across the galaxy. In council chambers, diplomats debated the implications of human military technology. On frontier worlds, colonists slept more soundly knowing that Earth's ships patrolled the void. In hidden bases throughout the Outer Rim, pirate leaders and warlords began to recalculate their risk assessments. The children of the Deathworld had answered an SOS call, and in doing so, they had reminded the galaxy of a simple truth: sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be more terrifying than war itself. And Earth, having survived 1,000,000 years of natural disasters and planetary predators, had learned that lesson better than anyone.